Let me give a brief introduction of Mufti Abdullah. He was born in California in 1978 and attended elementary, middle, and high school in his hometown. After graduating from high school, he enrolled at the University of California at Berkeley, continued to excel academically while participating in extracurricular activities, including serving as treasurer for the Muslim Student Association at UC Berkeley. Through the hard work and the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was able to finish the 4-year degree in only 2.5 years, alhamdulillah. He graduated with honors in 1998 with a degree in business administration. In order to quench his thirst for Islamic knowledge, Sheikh Abdullah traveled to Islamic University in South Africa, where he studied for 7 years. He completed the rigorous and intensive syllabus, which covers many of the Islamic sciences, including but not limited to fiqh, Arabic grammar, hadith, tafsir, aqidah, and many other literatures that he covered throughout his studies in South Africa. Mufti Abdullah has also written various books. One of the famous books, The Virtues of Islamic Knowledge and Stoning to Death in Islam. He is an expert in law and ruling in Islam. Without any further delay, I want to request Sheikh Abdullah to start.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Nabil Kareem. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa ba'd. As we observe in our daily lives, food and drink are an essential part of our lives. And we devote a significant part of our daily lives to preparing food, eating food, and talking about food. There are many among us who, in different aspects, have to avoid certain types of foods, have to watch their sugar, have to watch their cholesterol, and avoid other food allergies. At the same time, we know that there's a food movement as well. For example, the fast food nation, omnivore's dilemma, and this whole trend towards wholesome and organic foods. At the same time, as Muslims, it's essential that we understand the reasoning behind why we eat halal foods prepared in a special way. In many situations, we as Muslims do things as rituals or as habits while not understanding the deeper significance or the logic behind what we are doing. When it comes to discussion of food, society around us generally focuses only on the health, the medical, and the physical aspect of food. If you eat certain types of foods, you'll be healthy, you'll live longer. If you eat other types of foods, greasy, foods full of ghee, and other types of fatty foods, if you eat those foods, then you won't be healthy, you might end up getting a heart attack, and so on. Where the health aspect of food ends, and generally where society stops discussing food, that's where the halal discussion begins. And that's where the Islamic discussion begins. Because when we discuss you are what you eat, when we discuss this concept, generally people only focus on health. They only focus on physical. And at that point, Islam begins discussing the spiritual world. And we get an introduction to the spiritual world, which is behind what we eat. Little do we realize that when we eat halal food, there are blessings in every bite. There is a spiritual world working behind the scenes. And on the other hand, when a person does not eat halal food, and does not eat food prepared according to the Islamic way, there's also a hidden world and hidden effect which is taking place. And there is harm in every bite. Just to illustrate this point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran has mentioned the story of a tribe, of a Christian tribe, which was present during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The name of this tribe was Banu Najran. And when they heard of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they came from their city to visit the Prophet ﷺ and to ask him a few questions. If you look at the Holy Quran, this incident is made reference to in Surah Al Imran. فَإِنْ حَاجُّوكَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ ثُمَّ نَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. If we open up the books of tafsir, under this verse, this entire conversation between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and these Christians is recorded. And one of the topics of discussion was the discussion of food. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told these Christians that you will not accept Islam. I know that you will not accept Islam. And I also know the reason why you will not accept Islam. Thereafter, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned 3 reasons why these Christians would never accept Islam. And 3 barriers and obstacles between them and Islam. From these 3 reasons, one of them specifically had to do with food. وَأَقْلِكُمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, that you will not accept Islam. And one of the reasons why you will not accept Islam is the fact that you consume pork. From this incident and from this statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this now opens up to us a discussion on the spiritual world and the spiritual effect of what we eat. Sometimes it is difficult to perceive and to see with our own eyes the spiritual world which is taking place in front of us. Yes, it is a lot easier to see the physical effect of what we eat. For example, if we take one of these young kids here and we buy him $20 worth of candy, sugar, candy, lollipops, nerds, you name it. And he sits down, he eats all this candy. What's going to happen? Well, we can see the physical effect. He'll be running around the masjid, he'll be jumping off the walls, and he'll be going crazy. You can see that effect. In the same way, the spiritual world also has an effect. However, it is more difficult to see this. So one may ask, what does eating pork have to do with accepting Islam? I don't see the connection. One is food, one is accepting Islam. What does one have to do with the other? Well, in reality, one is completely connected to the other. And it has everything to do with the other. What you eat even has an effect on your ability to see the truth. And your ability to accept the truth and to see Islam for what it is. Beloved brothers, this is the effect food can have on a person. Yes, we know as Muslims we should not be eating pork. But this is just for us to understand how food can influence us, how food can affect us. No matter how smart a person is, no matter how open-minded a person is, the fact that he is consuming pork will not allow him to see Islam for what it is, will not allow him to see the beauty of Islam. Let us reflect and ponder over this. And to further prove this point, many of the converts who are among us, and many of the senior scholars of America, people who converted Islam, studied Islam for many years, and now are some of the leaders of this country, who I personally know and interact with. I can tell you from personal observations that many converts, somewhere along their spiritual journey, they will stop eating pork. And shortly after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them and open up Islam to them. I can give you many examples, and I can tell you many of my friends who have personally told me this. So again, to corroborate and to support what we have been saying, that such a simple change, not eating pork, can be the difference between a person accepting Islam and not accepting Islam. In the same way, we as Muslims also need to understand how halal food going into our system can affect our spirituality, can affect our behavior, and can affect our ability to do good deeds. There is a direct relationship, and there is a direct connection. That human being who eats halal foods and does his best to avoid haram foods, he naturally will incline towards good deeds. He naturally will want to read the Holy Quran. He will hate evil things, and he will stay away from evil things. For such a person to come to the masjid for Fajr, to wake up for Fajr, will be very easy for him. To read the Quran for 4 or 5 hours straight will be easy for him. He will enjoy it. He will taste that sweetness of faith. On the other hand, when a person is not careful of what they eat, when a person consumes unlawful and haram food, then there is also a direct effect. And this also directly influences the spirituality, the identity, the behavior, and the ability of that person to do good deeds. That person will not want to come to the masjid. That person will find it difficult to wake up for Fajr. That person, his heart will not be into salat. His heart will not be into reading the Holy Quran. And he will naturally incline towards evil. He will not want to do good. Beloved brothers, there are countless stories and incidents and real life examples which we can give. Certain Muslim brothers come up to me and approach me and tell me, "Oh Shaykh, when we eat out at an American food restaurant, even if it's seafood, even if it's vegetarian food, when we eat out at such establishments, we can directly see the effect on our lives. The next morning, we cannot wake up for Salat al-Tahajjud. We cannot wake up for our optional prayers. We just cannot wake up. And in the same way, if we look at the lives of the pious people before us, like the Sahaba radhiyallahu anhum, like the Tabi'een, like the great scholars of Islam, you will find this common trend among them. In fact, we can say that one of their secrets, one of their keys to the spiritual world and to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was being particular in what they ate, was their caution and concern about eating halal foods. In a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has summarized this halal issue for us, and has also clearly outlined for us the importance of eating halal. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a hadith إن الله طيب لا يقبل إلا الطيبة وإن الله أمر المؤمنين بما أمر به المرسلين يا أيها الرسل كلوا من الطيبات واعملوا صالحا. In the first part of this hadith, in a very beautiful way, Rasulullah ﷺ has summarized why a believer, why a Muslim should eat halal food. He explains that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pure. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only accept that which is pure, that which is halal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded all the believers with the same command which He has given to the prophets before us, as outlined to us in the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, in Surah Mu'minun, O prophets, eat from the wholesome and lawful foods. Eat from the wholesome and lawful foods. And do good deeds. The same command which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the prophets, it is also being directed to all the believers, to you and I. And in explanation, the scholars say that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning halal food in one hand and doing good deeds on the other hand is because there's a direct link. Eating halal will lead to a person doing good deeds, and eating haram will lead to a person not being able to do good deeds. This was the first part of the hadith. And to further drive this point home and to impress this concept firmly in our minds, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam thereafter has given us a real life example. ثم ذكر رجلا أطال السفر أشعث أغبر يرفع يديه يقول يا ربي يا ربي وملبسه حرام ومركبه حرام وغذي بالحرام فأنى يستجاب له. رواه الإمام المسلم في صحيحه. In this authentic hadith, which is narrated in Sahih al-Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam further says that there's an example of a human being, a real life example, and a practical example for us to relate to. That take the example of a human being who has been traveling for a long period of time. The commentators explain that this person is on his way for Hajj or any other act of worship. He is out on a noble path to serve the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His appearance is miserable, is pitiable. His body is covered in dust, and his appearance is also untidy, unkempt. If we were to look at this human being, we would say that he deserves the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he raises his hands, when he makes dua, many of us would assume that dua would be accepted. At the same time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to teach us, wanted to teach the ummah the importance of this halal issue and the effect of what a person eats on his spirituality, on his prayers. So despite these positive aspects which are found in this human being, he's on his way for Hajj, he's out in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Despite these positive aspects, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted us to understand how evil the effects of haram are and how severe the effects of haram are on a human being. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this human being, his clothing, unfortunately, is earned through unlawful sources. And secondly, his transportation is also earned through unlawful sources. And lastly, his physical body has been nourished through unlawful sources. So what is the end result? What will happen to the du'as the person is making? Rasulullah ﷺ explained that the effect of haram food is so great that it overrides, it dominates over the good a person is doing. It dominates over the journey the person is on. It dominates these good deeds the person is doing. And it wipes away his du'as. And unfortunately, his du'as will not be answered, will not be accepted. Beloved brothers, this was a brief introduction for us to the spiritual dimension in the food which we eat. And how a simple decision on what type of food a person eats, what type of candy a person buys, what restaurant a person eats at, where a person buys his halal meat, how such a simple decision can have such grave consequences or such positive consequences on a person's spirituality, on a person's behavior, and on a person's hereafter. Now, once we have understood how crucial, how vital, how essential this issue is to a Muslim's life, let us now discuss some practical challenges which we as Muslims living in this country face when it comes to halal. As our respected Imam explained, how do we know which products we buy are halal? How do we know that the meat which is sold in our stores meets the halal requirements or not? And in order to understand this issue, we need to understand some of the practical challenges which are found at our halal slaughterhouses, at our halal meat stores, and at our supermarkets. One important point to keep in mind is that to a great degree, the world has changed from 100 years ago. Due to the advent of technology and transportation, in one city, you now have fresh meat coming from all over the world. Whereas, perhaps 50 to 100 years ago, all the meat coming into a city was local, was within a few miles. Now with technology, now with freezers, fridges, and other technology in transportation, in one city, you have halal meat coming from South America. You have halal meat coming from the other side of the world in Australia and New Zealand. You have halal meat coming from the other side of the country, all the way up in New York. And you have halal meat coming from other countries like Canada, like South America. At the same time, as technology is picked up, now the majority of the meat being sold in our country with the label of halal, with the halal certificate and stamp, unfortunately is not being slaughtered by a Muslim. It is not being slaughtered by a Jew or by a Christian. And approximately 90% of the halal chicken being sold in our country, even with a halal sticker, is being slaughtered neither by a Muslim, neither by a Jew, neither by a Christian, neither by a human being. It is being slaughtered by a machine. Which raises great questions with regards to the halal status of that meat. How did the slaughterman, or how did the machine make the intention to slaughter? How did the machine recite tasmiyah and recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as is outlined in the Holy Quran in Surah An'am. كُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكْرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرْ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. And more importantly, when we go and purchase products, how do we know that they're slaughtered by a Muslim? How do we know that they're slaughtered by a machine? How do we know that halal meat was not slaughtered at the same place as pork? How do we know that that halal meat had the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recited upon it? So when we discuss this halal issue, and when we look at things at the ground level, at the stores, at the restaurants, we can say that there's a great deal of confusion. There's also a great deal of corruption and fraud at the store level. Take, for example, this term which has become famous, which is used, the term which many of us refer to, dhabiha. I'm sure many of us sitting here, if you were to ask the meaning of the word dhabiha, we would say hand slaughtered, slaughtered by hand. Unfortunately, even this term has been hijacked. And you will find stores, you will find products, you will find restaurants which will have big banners saying dhabiha, but in fact, they're using machine slaughtered chicken. So beloved brothers, the point here is not to scare us. The point here is to explain the reality to you. We have traveled all over the country. We have been to over 50 slaughterhouses in this country. We have visited many restaurants. We have visited many stores all over the country. And as the Muslim community, we have to accept and realize there is a real problem going on. There is a real issue when it comes to halal in this country. This cannot be denied. This cannot be swept under the rug. It is extremely difficult for the average Muslim to ensure that he eats authentic halal food. Whether he is eating out, whether he is purchasing his food, it is extremely difficult. And I will not take too long. The challenge is to come up with a solution. The challenge is for us, as the Muslim consumer, to be able to make an informed decision. And for us to have the necessary information to make an educated choice when it comes to what we buy. Let me give a simple example. When one of us goes into the supermarket and wants to buy ice cream, for example. As American living in this country, the consumer has the right to information. And when we purchase a product in this country, there are labels, there is ingredients information, and there is a nutrition label which gives us information. How much cholesterol is in that product, how much trans fat is in that product, what ingredients are in there, is there alcohol, and so on. So when we purchase that product, we can make an informed decision. Beloved brothers, the solution which we propose is that we give the Muslim consumer that same information when he is purchasing a product at a store, or he is purchasing a halal product at a store, or he is eating out at a restaurant. Let the Muslim consumer know through a third-party audit, through a verification system, where that halal meat is coming from. Is it being slaughtered by a Muslim? Is it slaughtered by a machine? Is Bismillah being read? Is the animal being stunned? Which slaughterhouse is it coming from? Simply give that information to the consumer and allow him to make an educated decision. And at a very basic level, simply provide that Muslim consumer with a reliable halal logo. If we travel to other countries overseas, such as Malaysia, such as South Africa, such as England, the process is extremely simple. It is a very simple process. There are numerous reliable halal organizations out there who insist on the sunnah method of hand slaughter. And when you eat out, when you look for a product, simply look for the halal logo. For example, in England, a very reliable halal organization is HMC. And there are hundreds of restaurants and hundreds of products which have that logo. There are a number of scholars who endorse that organization and work with that organization. So if you are in that country, your challenge and your struggle has been made very simple and very easy. You simply look for that logo. In the same way, my beloved brothers, when we normally choose a halal meat store, choose a restaurant, choose a product, we don't know what we're getting. Yes, there are labels there. Even the labels are confusing. Even the labels will misuse the word zabiha, misuse the word halal, misuse the label itself. We don't know where it's coming from. We don't know who's slaughtering it. We don't know this information. And it's very difficult for us to make phone calls to find out. So the solution which we are proposing is to set up a verification system endorsed by the scholars, supervised by the scholars, which will make our life easy for us and make our task easy for us. Through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have established a non-for-profit organization known as the Halal Advocates of America. Our website is www.halal advocates advocates with the S in the end .org. After looking at the process, the verification procedure used in other countries, we have now implemented this process in America. For example, if you're traveling to St. Louis, you want to find a restaurant or a store which sells only 100% halal products, slaughtered by a Muslim by hand. So you simply look for this logo at the restaurants and your job is done for you. In the same way, if you're traveling to Chicago, you also find certified stores and restaurants bearing the same logo. The name of the logo is HAFSA, the Halal Food Standards Alliance of America. This is a registered trademark in the United States of America. In the same way, in certain stores in Houston, if you are looking for reliable burger products, there are burger products in the stores in Houston with the same logo, the Halal Food Standards Alliance of America. And if you're traveling to San Francisco, you will also find 25 certified stores and restaurants. In a nutshell, our goal is to set up this process throughout the country, which means you as a consumer, when you eat at that store, when you purchase things at that restaurant, you can be rest assured. You can sleep at night with a clean conscience. And you can know for sure that that halal meat product has been verified from the time it was slaughtered, from the time it came to the store. There is a verification procedure going on. Someone is coming to that restaurant. Someone is inspecting that restaurant. Someone is signing a contract with that restaurant. And you can be rest assured that that product is 100% halal. This is the solution which we have in mind. In order for this solution to work, in order for this program to work, we require the support of the local Muslims in each city. And inshallah, it is our goal to set up a similar program here in Houston. For that, we ask for your du'as, we ask for your support, and we ask for your, inshallah, for your moral support as well.